Hello, everybody. It's Theoretical Bullshit once again. I was on the 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica, California, and there was a woman who came up to me and she handed me like a pamphlet, and on the front of the pamphlet it said, "Don't you wish you could live forever?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, I know what this is." And I opened it up, and it had like all these like sort of like bulleted points, and it had all these like subsections, but it kept like there was sort of like a motif in the pamphlet. It was a Christian evangelical sort of pamphlet missionary thing. But it kept coming back to like the main theme was the good news. And I've heard that before. I hear that a lot. Like, here's the good news. Don't you wish you could hear the good news? Part of a Christian's job is to spread the good news. And I had never really thought about it. I just always kind of went, yeah. But for some reason it struck me. Good news? Really? And I started to read, and I thought about what I know of Christianity. You've got Adam and Eve, and they're created without any knowledge of right and wrong, because that's the way that mankind was created back then. In fact, the only way to have knowledge of right and wrong was to eat from the tree of knowledge. But in order to eat from the tree of knowledge, you'd have to disobey a rule that somebody gave you, but you don't know that disobeying rules are wrong because you don't have any knowledge of right and wrong. So in order to have knowledge of right and wrong, you have to have already committed wrong, but you didn't know you were actually committing wrong because you didn't have knowledge of right and wrong. But anyway, Adam and Eve, they mess up and they do it, and they all of a sudden become aware of right and wrong. They become aware of a lot of things. They realize that they're naked and this and that, and God is, of course, outraged by this. I'm not sure exactly why, because he was omniscient, and knew it was going to happen anyway. But anyway, he's outraged, and he, punishes them for it. But like really, really punishes them. I mean, he says, you were going to live for a long time. Now you're only going to live for a short time, and you have to endure, child pain or childbirth, and that's going to be really painful, and all these, other little tiny things, aches and pains, and life's pretty much going to suck now. And Adam and Eve are going, huh? What the hell did we do? But the big one, the kicker is the biggest punishment is that God's not really just punishing Adam and Eve. He's punishing every single one of their descendants until the end of time. So he introduces this idea of original sin, and God basically says, well, I don't know if he said it, but it's part of Christian doctrine. Everybody is going to be born a sinner. Now that has nothing to do with whether or not you actually sin, but everybody's born a sinner. Everybody's born with a sinful nature, because Adam and Eve did that, and I guess they passed it along. I don't know how they passed it along. I don't know scientifically or in any way at all how to give my sinfulness to one person or another, but apparently God approved of this and made it so. So I guess there's like a sin DNA or something. But anyway, just by being human and having being born human, you are sinful by nature. Even if you wanted to live a completely sinless life, even if you wanted to live a perfectly good life, you can't. It's not an option. You don't have a choice in the matter. In addition to that, you are punished for being a sinner, over which you have no choice. So basically, you're punished. You have to go to hell if you're a sinner. And so we're kind of like stuck in this, pickle here where we can't help what we are, but we're being punished for what we are, which we can't help, and so that's kind of a bummer. But there's a solution to the problem, and the solution is that Jesus died for our sins. And what that means is Jesus lived a perfect life without sinning. He wasn't born a sinner, so he has that at least advantage. I guess you could say that maybe Jesus was born kind of like on the level that Adam and Eve were, or I don't know. But Jesus is God incarnate, and he's also God's son at the same time. Which I don't understand, but I don't need to, that's not the point. And so Jesus lives a completely sinless life, but gets punished a lot. Like, it's really, really horrible. Like, he gets crucified, and he asphyxiates, and he's tortured, and whipped, and flogged, and beaten, and what he's basically doing is he's dying for the world's sins. He's dying so that he's paying the price for us. A lot of Christians use the metaphor like you're in a courtroom, and the judge is like, you're gonna go to jail forever, and then somebody steps in and goes, I'll do that jail time, and the judge is like, okay, Um, which doesn't seem like a very fair principle, but hey, we're grateful because this is good news. That's the good news. Um, but anyway, the good news is that Jesus did this thing for us, but he didn't really just give us the gift. You have to be able to accept the gift, and in order to accept the gift, um, he couldn't just like leave it on our doorstep. We had to actually like meet him at the door. Otherwise, he leaves that little sticky note, like the post office does, which I hate when they do that. But in order to accept the gift, we have to believe that it happened. We have to know that it happened, we have to believe that it happened, or we have to have faith that it happened, depending on what kind of Christian you are and what your ideals are. But we have to conclude that this thing actually happened. Not only do we have to conclude that this thing happened, but we have to accept it. I don't really know a whole lot of people who believe that Jesus died for their sins, but are like, nah, I don't want it. The problem with that, though, is that it's not, only 30% of the world or 40% of the world is actually Christian, which goes to show that it's not evident in the world around us that Jesus died for our sins and that God exists. I mean, I'm an atheist, so I mean, it's not whether or not. I mean, you could argue that atheists are illogical, or that non-Christians are illogical, or that they're just not observant, or they don't see what they see. But the point is that it's not evident. Christianity is not self-evident. You have to either have faith in it, and some people think just faith alone is a virtue, or you have to come to that conclusion by some means of, inductive reasoning or something. And a lot of people would argue that inductive reasoning would be flawed, hence the point that it's not evident. So it comes down to more of an issue, not so much of morality, but of belief. You're either punished or rewarded for what you think is true or don't think is true, not so much the kind of person you are, what kind of things you do. I mean, those count, but the big thing is you're not going to heaven unless you think this certain thing, this certain proposition is true. Otherwise, you're going to hell for being who you are, which you can't help who you are. So that's the good news. The good news is that we're screwed and our lives suck and they're shorter than we are and we have to endure pain and all these horrible things and we're all born sinners and we don't have the option of being good, and even if we wanted to be good we couldn't, and we're punished for that. You have to spend an eternity in hell, choking and coughing and burning and gnashing your teeth and stomping on the floor, and it's absolutely horrible. And that there's one way out, but you have to believe that this thing happened without it really being evident. So anyway, it all comes back to this is the good news of which Christians speak, and it just blows my mind. This is an incredibly depressing religion. So I went home thinking to myself, that's not good news. That sucks, man. That's okay. Basically, I would have preferred if the woman came up to me and handed me a pamphlet that said, "Hey, look, humanity got screwed. We didn't really do anything wrong. A couple of people a long time ago did something wrong, but they didn't really know that they were doing something wrong. But the rest of us got punished for all of eternity for that, and we're in this situation that we don't really deserve to be in. We didn't really do anything to deserve it. In fact, we were born a certain way, and we don't really have a choice as to how we were born. And it's more of a label because we don't actually have to even sin in order to be a sinner, but we're just all sinners anyway. It's like a label that's been put on us that we can't help. And so, yeah, life sucks, and God's not really fair, and none of this is really just or even justifiable, but you got to do this thing, and I know it takes a whole lot of faith because there isn't really evidence for it, at least not hardcore evidence. I mean, some people would argue for, some people would argue against, but anyway, you got to make this leap of faith, and you got to believe that this thing happened, otherwise you're going to be tortured, and it's going to suffer for all of eternity. So, and then the pamphlet concludes with, I'm really, really sorry that it turned out this way, but we got to do what we got to do. It's you and me, we're in this together, we can't help it. I mean, big guys watching, don't piss them off, because, look what happened the last time somebody pissed them off. I don't see how that's good news. And I mean, this post is just more of a rant, I think. But I mean, I'm completely open to the possibility of somebody explaining to me how this is a positive outlook on life and a positive philosophy and a positive religion. So that's all. Thank you, everybody.